Today, my guest is Brian Garish. Brian is the president of Banfield Pet Hospitals, which has over 19,000 associates and over 1,000 hospitals across the country. Brian joined Banfield in 2015 as the COO and became president in 2017. During his time with Banfield, the organization has grown by over 50%. Prior to Banfield, Brian served as an area vice president at CVS, where he was responsible for more than 600 stores, covering 17 states with over 15,000 associates. Brian began his career stocking store shelves at Walgreens. He's never sat in a corner office or followed a traditional trajectory. This unique path has pushed him to think differently. He leads with empathy and always tries to find creative ways to connect with his associates, and you'll hear more about that today in our interview. Brian holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy from Indiana University and is currently enrolled in Wharton's General Management Program for senior executives. He serves on the boards of nonprofits that include Metropolitan Family Services, Columbia River Economic Development Council, and the Banfield Foundation. He is also a member of the Fortune CEO Initiative and CEO Connection. So Brian, great to see you. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I'm great. It's great to see you as well.
Good. So I'm so excited. I'm always excited when we chat and learn so much from you as a person and as a leader. You know, this show, this new season is about the hybrid revolution. And,
Yes.
I'd love for you to start off by sharing, what surprised you the most over the last year?
Oh gosh. What surprised me the most was how powerful the human-animal bond has truly been. At Banfield, we have always known how powerful that bond is. But when we were isolating, stuck at home, not traveling, the role that the pet played was even more important now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it really has turned the year 2020 into the year of the pet. And when I think about not being in the office, working from home, my two cats, Ashton and Kenji, the role that they played in my life has never been more important. And so I always knew how strong the human animal bond was, but it's really surprised me in how strong it was. And of course, in our survey, we saw how important it was, with nearly 11 million households adopting a pet last year. That need for companionship has never been more important, and the role that pets played in our lives has been pretty awesome.
Yeah, look, I agree. You and I met a couple of years ago. You visited me in person in my office. We have a picture, and
Yes,
you met my dog Cruiser. And I don't
it
know,
was so
and
great.
he's the best. I'm actually taping this podcast today from my closet, so he's not. Usually, he is here with me, but we have some work being done, so I'm hiding away down here. And I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but when we were moving offices, they weren't allowing any pets, and we were taking like a full floor, and we basically said, this is a deal breaker. If Cruiser can't,
Good for
no, we
you.
did. We said, and it was a deal breaker. Well, if Cruiser can't come, then we are not coming. And they're like, okay, we'll figure out a way around it. But not everybody is that lucky. I use an office in my husband's
Right.
office. He works for himself. And so as people start to go back to the office, and you're right, 11 million households got a new pet this last year, which is insane. And if I'm a
Right.
leader and I'm trying to figure out how to go back to work and what are all the implications, I might not even thought about pets as an issue. So where would a leader start to think about these implications, and what can they do as part of the either in the workplace or even making it easier for employees who have gotten pets? Are there new benefits in place for them? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of people having this conversation now. So to answer your question, where should everyone start? Just by talking to your people. So when you think about being a leader in a company and being part of the conversation of what's the hybrid workforce going to look like, what's the hybrid working conditions going to look like, it can't be made in an office, or it can't be made with just an executive team. It has got to have your people's voice involved in the conversation. And we're hearing that from people. Like, they are concerned. What are they going to do with their pets when they go back to the office? They want to have flexible working arrangements, which do include having an option for their pets. So I think first and foremost, it's about talking to your people to see how important of an issue this is. And when you understand like what's important for your people, you then figure out ways to solve that
Mm-hmm.
issue. And so we're seeing a lot of people now with pets that are talking to their veterinarian, asking, what do I need to do to prepare for when I go back to the office? But luckily at Banfield, we've been ahead of the curve on this one where we allow dogs in the office. And there's nothing better than having a work day when you walk out of a conference room and you're seeing a wagging tail. There's no such thing as having a bad day in the office when you have little puppies running around the office. So it's great. So what's wrong with helping all your morale by having dogs in the office? It'll only make the workplace that much better.
I agree with you. And I think, there's financial implications. Everybody got a dog and they were home. And now if you go back to work, you might need a dog walker or doggy daycare. And I do. I think a trend that I'm seeing, around bringing your human to work and creating a more human workplace is, not everything is created equal. And some people might have pets and not have kids, so they don't need that benefit. And really trying to approach this not as a one size, fits all kind of solution.
Yeah, for sure. It's never going to be a one size fits all solution. But I think when you talk to your people, you're going to understand what's really important in their lives. I also think, as leaders, I mean, so many leaders have pets. So whether you adopted a pet or you just formed an even stronger bond and relationship with your pet during the sheltering at home and staying in place, it's about really understanding that emotional connection that we have with pets and how can we truly make that bond even stronger and do what's right. And so I think there's going to be lots of different solutions, and I think there's going to be different solutions that don't involve pets, to your point as well. It could just be working from home. What are some remote options? How do we think differently about team building and different type of events like that?
Right. I could see, maybe the start time of the day is more flexible, so you can do your own walk in the morning versus paying somebody and
Oh,
coming in
sure.
later. And I mean, I bet you, I do a lot of work with ERGs, employee resource groups, millennial
Hmm.
groups or multi-generational groups of women. And I think, pet owners, I could see that becoming a group where people come together and brainstorm and figure out ways to support each other.
Absolutely. You're seeing those communities being connected right now online and different apps. So it's already happening. It's just about making sure that you're part of the conversation, understanding the role that pets are going to play in our lives, and how do we make it great for all of our people to do exactly what you said. Maybe that's starting the day a little or a little later. Maybe that's ending the day a little earlier. But having all those tips and tricks to make sure that we have that keep that bond strong is going to be important.
Yeah, I think it's great. So I have learned so much from you as a leader. I said in the intro that the Banfield business has boomed since you've been there since 2015. And as an outside person looking in, you are someone that's really focused on culture and values. As cheesy as it sounds, I talk about it, how you get the values off the walls and into the halls. And so I would love for my audience to learn from you as well. And so the question that I want to ask is, if these are very turbulent times and we've had a heck of a year
Yes.
plus. So if you were asked to contribute a chapter in a new book on leading during these turbulent times, what do you think you've done really well that others could learn from? And the flip side is what's keeping you up at night?
Well, I'll start with what's keeping me up at night is we're not hearing all of our associates' voices. And I think that's one of the things that we tried to do very well during this time was just improve the communication and not just improve communicating out to our people, but improving the two-way dialogue with our people. So like when I think back to when the pandemic started, we instituted communication call trees that across our practice where we communicated all the information that we knew out to make sure every one of our associates heard it. And then we also said, okay, now what's on your mind? And so each hospital would literally talk to their field director and say, here's what I'm hearing from my associates in the hospital. And then the field director would take, their 17 to 20 per market. They take all that and bring that together, and they take that to their regional team. So we have over 1,000 hospitals. So every single day we heard from what's on the mind, what's happening in our 1,000 hospitals. And then that would come all the way back up to our office. And then once we heard the themes and the questions, we would provide those answers and communicate it back out the next
Mm,
day. So we really wanted to have that two-way dialogue. So I was really proud of our teams for having that dialogue, because when you're going through something like this, we want to know what our people are experiencing, like what's on their minds, because we want to help solve the problems that they have.
right.
And sometimes it's problems that they're experiencing as a person working on the front lines in the hospital. So it's how do we keep our associates safe and working? Also, it could be here's what our consumers or our customers or clients are saying or what they need to make sure that they can feel safe bringing their pets in. So I felt really good about that communication at the very beginning because culture is my top priority and has been my top priority. The strategic direction of the company is a second
Right.
priority because strategy without empathy is a wasted idea. And so culture has been and always will be my top priority. So I feel great about how we started to communicate. But what keeps me up at night is if we don't keep that same rigor around listening at scale, a true two-way dialogue, then our people are their voice isn't being heard. And more so now than ever, people want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be understood. And we have that opportunity to do that even better.
Yeah. In the beginning of the pandemic, we were checking in sometimes for 60 minutes of a 60-minute meeting. And then 5 months into it, we were checking in for 30 minutes of a 60-minute meeting. And we do need
Yes,
to get work done, but the checking in, can't stop. Every day during this pandemic. I mean, I even think about it on a personal note. My son just last week had COVID. Like here we are almost at the end, like with people
oh
getting
wow,
vaccinated. He's fine, thankfully. But if somebody hadn't
wow,
checked in with me, in a while or that day, like that day is going to be very different for me than I was the day before. And so, I agree. It's this
absolutely.
balance of we need to get work done and we need to move our businesses forward, but how do we do that while we continue to make sure that people's voices are heard? Now, I happen to have an idea on how to do that, which is a topic of my most recent book on rituals. I mean, do you think rituals
Yes.
could be a tool in the leader's toolbox on how to keep those ideas fresh? And are there any rituals? What kinds of rituals have you seen? You and I did a great talk with your organization about rituals,
Right.
either that you're doing, that the leadership's doing, that the individual hospitals are doing that really can help people continue to feel connected and heard.
Absolutely. What 1000% rituals play an important role in this. And we had the theme of our national field leadership meeting. We bring all our hospitals together. So right before the pandemic actually happened, we brought all our leaders together. And the theme of our session for the year for 2020 was be empowered, be passionate, and be here.
Mhm.
And so we wanted our associates to be empowered, to truly own the hospital experience and own what they needed to do to take care of each other and take care of the pets and clients. The passion is about really connecting to our purpose, which is making a better world for pets. And being here is how Banfield shows up for society. Well, we were thankful that that was the theme because that really anchored us in 2020 once the pandemic really started to come in. And that was, again, back to the communication tree. So that became a ritual. They've modified because you don't need to do it every single day as consistent as you had because we have more answers now and we have our leaders because it was that true conversation and time of if I don't have this in my day, I'm not hearing from you, but I'm not telling you what my people need as well. And so we still have these communication trees in place and it's a little more security than we did. But this type of communication has been an organizational ritual when I think about, yes, when you joined us, it was so fantastic because your book was an inspiration to so many of our associates about how they can make rituals in their workspace for their team, whether it's the function that they lead or again in our field and for the hospitals. So it's been so important to have rituals play a role. And that has allowed our leaders to truly be empowered to
Mhm.
say, when I can communicate with my people, I know what's going to work for all of us, and I'm empowered to do what's right for our people. We're going to unite our passion. We're going to be here for each other and society. And the other thing I'll share about rituals that I've found incredibly important for myself is in my team is how do we cast that shadow as the senior leaders of Banfield that we're not saying one thing, but we're actually walking the talk.
Mhm.
And so what we found out, I mean, study after study just talked about the mental health that we've all been experiencing, the just the ups and downs. I mean, I thought I was great for a lot of the months, and then winter came. I
Yeah.
mean, me personally, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see some sunlight. I got to get out of here. It took a big toll on myself. And it was, how did I create those rituals, my personal rituals, to make sure that I was distinguishing between when work would start and stop and when was I, quote unquote, off the
Mhm.
clock. And music plays an important, very important role in my life. And I didn't have that commute any longer. And as a result, I used to think like when I left the office, I was pretty good about not going home and working. And I used that short commute I had to going home. And then I would, do whatever I needed to do, work out, listen to music, eat, whatever. But I didn't have that any longer. And I just realized that work was never stopping and I wasn't my best self. So I shared that story with my organization on, for me to be my best self, I need to have a cutoff time. And what that meant was creating a ritual. And that was for music for me.
Wow. I mean, I love that. Leaders have got to lead. They've got to model this. I mean, every day in the last couple of weeks, it's been all about wellness and mental health. And, at Citigroup, they just announced May 28th, the whole company is going to be off. LinkedIn just gave everybody a week off for this. But you can do that but also not mean it. Right. So you on paper,
Absolutely.
You can have those days off. But if leaders aren't leading with, a sense of vulnerability, saying, you know what, I thought I was okay, but, I really wasn't. And, I needed this. That's what's going to help other people, I think anyway, feel safe for them to focus a little bit on their own wellness, as well. It's less about the program and more about, are people actually doing what they say they're trying to do?
Absolutely. That's why I think it's so important for our team to model that behavior and to walk that talk. And talking to our field leaders, it was the same thing of making sure that you're doing this and also making sure that you take time off. I remember last summer, people weren't traveling. They couldn't go on vacation. I understand. And I remember having a conversation saying, no, you can go on vacation. You can take time off. Maybe you can't go where you want to go. I get that. But taking time off is just as important. Even if you're staying at home, I get it. You probably would rather, you keep telling your story that, well, I'll just work if I'm going to be at home. But there's something powerful to shutting down the laptop, not looking at the phone, not taking those work calls, and just recharging. And I asked all of our leaders to just take some time off, take your time, model the behavior that it's okay to take time off, because we're very lucky to be in a business where there's a lot of demand, and our business was great before the pandemic. It's great during and after, or I guess we're not after yet, but it's great during and now because that human animal bond's so strong. But we can't be our best selves
Right, if you're burned out.
If we don't take care of ourselves. Exactly. And our hospitals and all of our associates need our leaders to be present and to be fully available. And you're not going to be if you're burnt out. And so it's about, how do we take that visible action to say, my health and well-being is important and I'm taking some time for myself.
Yeah. So before I ask, there's one question that I ask always on my podcast, which you might know what it is. But before I get to that, I have been reading up on what's going on with the pets and how many people got pets during the pandemic, as you said, and this worry that people, that the rise in pet adoptions may lead to people having to surrender pets. So you gave some strategies on hopefully what leaders can do so that won't happen. But are there any resources or support that you can share with listeners if they're really feeling like that's something that they may have to do and dealing with a lot of stress around it? Like, where can they turn?
Where they should turn is to their veterinarian. Talking with your veterinarian about tips and tricks of what you can do when you go to the office to make sure that's an easier adjustment for your pet and for yourself is incredibly important. So partnering with a professional is so, so, so important. Yes, you talked about potential pet abandonment. I'm an optimist. I don't know that maybe I should say, I hope that's not the case, because we've seen how strong the pet relationship has been. And yes, we've had 11 million additional households welcome a new pet during the pandemic. But the biggest drive in pet ownership is through Gen Z and millennials.
Yeah.
And we have seen how important the pet is in Gen Z and millennial. And so that's not been a group that historically is like, well, we're trying it and now it doesn't work out. It's a true connection to the pet and that human animal bond. So I'm very optimistic that it's not about surrendering a pet. It's going to be more about, how do I transition in a way? And so again, partnering with your veterinarian is going to be the most important thing that you can do. And some of those tips and tricks are exactly what you brought up earlier as well. Is like, can you start later so you can get the walk in the morning? Can you maybe come home a little earlier and figure out how to use a hybrid working environment? But also don't avoid like emotional departures. Kind of ease into it. So whether that's playing fetch for a little bit, or playing with a cat toy like an Ashton and Kenji, I'll get their laser pointer out and have to wear them out a little bit before they before I would head out. But there's some small things like that we can do that makes the transition easier, just so it's not so abrupt. And I think it's important to do that now.
Yeah. Well, it is amazing. I mean, here I am, this workplace strategist, thinking about the hybrid revolution. And I have to be honest. I mean, I have a pet and I love the pet, love Cruiser, but I don't know if I would have, before I met you, would I have really thought about this from the perspective of leadership and benefits and, pets as ability to retain talent. And, look, there are many things that we couldn't have predicted as it relates to this pandemic. But I think these listeners, will learn so much to say, you know what, I hadn't really thought about that. We're all home all day. My kids are not in school. Like my
Right.
dog has never been happier. So
Exactly. Well, and see, like to that point what you just said, your dog. So Cruiser's never been happier. And think about
from what he
bond
tells
that you
us.
have.
He tells us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, at least we believe that too, right? But I even just think about like the time I spend with my cats, Ashton and Kenji. I mean, they just bring me tremendous joy, and the antics that they do. I mean, my cats are out of control. Like they're out of control. They're so funny, but the joy that they've brought me. I personally, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen when I have to go back to the office? So I lean on my team all the time and all our veterinary professionals here on give me the tips, give me the tricks of what I can do. One other thing I'll mention is making sure that we think about the eating schedule is important as well, because typically if you went to the office, whenever you would leave, we're creatures of habits as well. So like we get up, we do the same routine. And we would feed our dogs in the morning, or maybe we feed at night. Well, now that we're not in the office, we may have changed their eating habits and their patterns as well. So it's just being thoughtful around. And I guess I'd say using empathy to understand what is our pet's experience and how do we make sure that we're considerate for that change as well.
Creating some new pet rituals.
That's right.
All right. So my question that everybody gets is, what do you do in your life that makes you feel most like you?
Gosh, it's such a good question because there's so many things that I think, make me feel like who I am that really drives my identity. And when I'm not at work, it's all about music. It's about reading and learning, and I more so curiosity. And I'm a huge NBA junkie. I don't really watch much television, but I'll always have an NBA game on. So oftentimes an NBA game will be on. It'll be on mute, and I'll have music playing in the background. But just watching basketball is always fun for me. But music is really my identity, and just curiosity. So reading, I love it.
Awesome. Well, next time you come to New York, we'll bring you to a Knicks game. They're actually pretty good this year, so we're having a
great year,
a decent season. My son and I we watch every game. All right, so a couple of speed questions, and then we'll get to the end. So you mentioned all the stuff about reading. My first question was, what are you reading?
Oh, I'm reading Adam Grant's new book.
Oh, Think Again?
Think Again, yes, thank you.
Great.
Yes, it's a fantastic book. Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's on I have it right here. I've got to start it.
Yeah. It's so powerful. Such a great book.
Great. So other than the NBA, so you're not a big Netflix Hulu guy?
No, I'm really not. Now I will watch. I have both, and I will watch some series, if you will. I guess that's what it's called. That shows you my level.
Right, you're watching the NBA. We love it. We love it.
I'm watching the NBA, but I have been watching the F1 series on Netflix, which is really cool.
Oh, for those, this is an audio, but we have a video on right now, and I'm looking at Brian, and his cat just walked in front of his face. Which cat is this?
This one's Kenji.
Okay, well, that brings me to question number 3. Do either of your cats have any pet tricks?
Oh, yes, they have lots of tricks. And if you go to my Instagram, you'll see almost all of them. They are out of control. So, it's interesting. My 2 cats, Ashton and Kenji, they're brothers, same litter. And their personalities just couldn't be any different. It's just so funny. So Kenji, who just walked across the screen, he likes to get out. He has to get out. So he's the one that there's a video on my Instagram of where he opened the door when I was actually given a presentation. So I'm sitting at the same spot, and I hear this bing. And I'm like, oh gosh, this bing means a door or window is open. And I'm by myself. So that's not good. And I knew exactly what happened because I opened my front door because I had a package that was delivered like 30 minutes prior. And Kenji has a fascination with opening doors. And he initially would open the door and push the door out. but now he's figured out how to open the door by pulling it inward. That's a pretty good trick, I would say.
Wow.
So I have a Nest camera, by the way. And so I literally am presenting. I take my headphones off. I run outside and I get my cats and I have to bring them back in. But you can see me do like a quick little loop around my front door to get my cats back inside.
Nice.
So that's Kenji's trick.
All right. Well, we'll go on to your Instagram for the rest of the pet
goodness.
tricks. And the final question is, if you had to pick one word to describe, how you are feeling about, the future of work and leading in the hybrid revolution, what would that one word be?
Excited.
Great.
Absolutely excited. And why? Because we're in a new day and age in which we can change. We don't have to go back to the standardized approach that we all experience. Erica, I have not met a person yet who has said, I miss all the work travel that I did. I miss, flying across the country or flying somewhere for a half-day meeting and then just to fly home. I have not met anyone who's missed 100% of their travel. So many people have made commitments on, I want to do 50% or less or 25 or, it's that acknowledgement. So I'm excited that, I would rather not be here in the pandemic, just to be clear, but we are here and we have a choice. We have a choice to look at it and be optimistic about what the future can hold, or we can be pessimistic about what was taken away from us. And for the first time in my working career, this is the least amount I've traveled. So I've taken the opportunity to embrace that I'll never have this time again. And how can I create the right rituals that have made me a better person and better leader? And understanding that the future of work is going to look differently. So I'm excited to have this opportunity to engage with all of our associates across Banfield on understanding what is it that you need, what is it that we can do differently, and how can we make those changes so we could really put culture at the forefront to make sure that we truly are an employer of choice where people not only start, but they stay and grow their careers here. And I think every leader has that same opportunity.
Great. Well, I agree. I am excited as well. And I'm also excited for everybody to hear this episode of Left to Our Own Devices. So, Brian, as always, thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing you in person in New York with Cruiser at the Knicks game the next time.
Yes, I cannot wait. Well, yes, I cannot wait for that. So looking forward to catching up with you again in New York. And we're soon. We're getting close here.
I know, me too.
So it feels really good. So yes, I can't wait to see you in Cruiser as well.
All right. Well, take care and thank you again.